incredible job trying to live through this, not to belittle, however, the economic hardships that many have faced. On behalf of UPNA DMV, American Muslim Healthcare Professionals, I'm Dr. Tayyib Rana. I'm broadcasting to you from Virginia, the DC metro area. Joining me this evening are my colleagues, Dr. Habib Chatani, who is the Social Welfare Committee Chair for UPNA DMV. Also Dr. Samia Paracha, who is our president of UPNA DMV. And this briefing tonight is generously being done by the Wall Street Alliance Group that is headed by two wonderful gentlemen, Mr. Syed Nishat and Mr. Aadil Zaman. They specialize in specialty financial planning for physicians. We'll have a series of questions that I will go through. I'm your moderator for the evening. The goal of this is that we want to provide very clear, concise, but simply laid out knowledge about what kind of financial instruments are available to physicians, their practices, but even other small businesses who are trying to survive in these difficult waters that we're treading right now. So I'll have a series of questions. You are very welcome, and we would actually like to solicit your questions through Facebook Live or whatever chat that you can put them on, and we will try to address as many of those as possible. So without further ado, Adil will say a few words, and then we'll dive into our presentation.
Thank you very much, Tayyib, for having us over here, and thank you, UPNA DMV Chapter President Samia Paracha, Past President Tayyib Rana, Chair Social Welfare Committee Habib Chatani, for organizing this educational talk. This is a very challenging time for everyone, and for you to take out time from your busy schedules to organize this for the community is a great service, so thank you for that. I would also like to thank all the physicians who are actually on the front line of this crisis. Now, at Wall Street Alliance Group, we being a firm that specializes in financial planning for physician families, when this crisis happened, we decided that we are going to dedicate some time in educating physicians about the various financial support programs available to them. So we are very happy to be here and very, very happy to address any questions that you and the audience might have.
Thank you, Adil. We'll dive right into one of the subjects of really great interest to probably the majority of our viewers, especially the business owners. And that's the payroll protection program that the federal government passed. Lots of talk about this PPP program. Many people have applied for it. I don't think many have yet, at least the smaller businesses have yet received it. But even a week into the program, there's still a lot of confusion about this program. So would love your insight into what the PPP program is.
Absolutely. So this is the Paycheck Protection Program, and it is one of the most time-sensitive and in-demand program right now. And this is basically for small businesses. So if you have less than 500 employees, this is for you. If you're a physician practice, this is for you. If you're a self-employed physician, this is for you. Now, the idea of this program is the government basically, for small businesses, they want to put money in your pocket so that you can survive in the next 2-3 months, so that when the economy comes back, you can hit the road running. Now, the way that this works, Tayyib, is that they calculate your loan amount by taking your average monthly payroll, multiply that by 2.5 times, and that is the loan amount that you could be eligible for. So for example, if your average monthly payroll is $20,000, 2.5 times that, $50,000 is basically your loan amount. Now, once you get the loan, what the government wants you to do is they want you to spend at least 75% of this money on payroll, and the rest of the 25% of the money you can spend on utilities, rent, and mortgage. The interesting thing that I have about this loan is that this is actually a forgivable loan. So as soon as you get the money, an 8-week clock starts. And during that 8 weeks, if you use the money in the manner that I just outlined, then that amount gets forgiven. And whatever is not used in that amount of time, that you have to pay back over a 2-year period. and the interest rate is only 1%. So as you can see, this is a very strong loan that the government is giving. And the way that they're dispersing the funds is they're dispersing them through banks. So our advice would be that if you have a relationship with a business banker and you feel that you're eligible for this, contact your business bank to apply for this. It is being given out on a first serve, first come basis. The amount is limited. There's only 349 billion that is available out there. So we would recommend, if you're eligible, try to apply for it as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. Nishat, can we get into a little bit more detail? First, a little bit more specifics, how does one go about applying for this? And then, of course, one of the great attractions of this, there's this loan forgiveness concept here. Mm-hmm. If you could please address that a little bit. And I'm going to throw a little bit of my own personal question into this, that I am a Wells Fargo client. I really got locked out of this. Initially, it was because of a governmental cap. And now that cap has been lifted, but I still have not been able to get an application through. What are your suggestions for somebody like me as a follow-up to those other first two questions?
Sure. So let me just try to answer the first part of the question, where to apply and who's eligible. So as Adil mentioned, that if you're a small business, you are qualified for it, but there's some confusion people have. Hey, I don't have a payroll. I'm a solo practitioner. I just do an independent contractor. Do I qualify for that as well? Both individuals, both people qualify. So there are two deadlines you have to remember. The first one is April 3rd. This is the date that started for people, for employers who have payroll, who have W-2 employees, and who pay themselves as well. This is April 3rd. April 10th, which is last Friday, and is yet to, they have to release the portal. This is if you do locum at the hospital or if you are completely 1099. So you can apply from April 10th as well. Now, the go-to person over here is not directly with SBA. A lot of people running for the SBA try to complete the application now. The way the process works, SBA lenders, which are the bank, they will do the data verification. So you must go through a SBA lender through the bank. The best and the easiest process is you already have an existing relationship. Ideally, not necessarily it will work out, may not be, but at least the first go-to person is your bank, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Chase. Go to them. They already have an account set up for them for a business account, so it will be easy for you to apply for the loan. Now, once you actually figure out if you are W-2 versus completely 1099, some banks are doing online, some banks are doing via form, local bank. Either way, there's one important thing you have to understand when you're completing the form, which is the monthly average payroll, annual basis. What is that exactly? It is not as simple as like your average monthly pay multiplied by 2.5. This is what you're going to get. I just want to put up a slide there. It will give you some understanding what I'm talking about. There are few things that are included. There are few things that are excluded when you actually talk about the overall payroll. So for example, when you're talking about your monthly average payroll, wages are included, definitely. But if an employee is making more than $150,000, the maximum you can count is up to $100,000. That's very important though. So let's say you are a sole owner, you're paying yourself $150,000, the maximum you can count for calculation purpose is $100,000. Number two, if you're paying an employee family, vacation, medical leave, those are included. Health insurance premium, they are included for the calculation. Now, most important thing, people are missing out that they didn't realize retirement benefit must be included for the calculation. Let's say if you have a SEP IRA or a defined benefit plan, that needs to be included for the calculation. Because if you don't include it, you may get a dent for the overall loan you're applying for. And then state and local tax, those needs to be included for the calculation. But there are a few things that needs to be excluded. For example, payroll tax and income tax, that needs to be excluded from the calculation. And obviously, as I mentioned, any employee making more than $100,000, they are excluded from the calculation as well. So as you see, this is not as simple, and we highly recommend that you or we encourage you to speak to your CPA or a payroll company or your financial advisor who can guide you through it to go through these detailed numbers. But just to summarize in a simple terminology, if I have to explain, if your, let's say your annual pay is 100,000, you pay an income tax of $25,000, what should you subtract it? So you get the number 75,000, but let's say if you have a retirement contribution, 25,000, I'm giving an example, you add it, so number becomes $100,000, you divide by 12, that becomes $8,000, you multiply it by 2.5, the amount is about $20,000. This is a very basic math. So make sure that you add few things, you subtract few things to derive in the number as well. Now, once you get the number, what you do is, when you go back to the bank, they will ask you a few questions. Like for example, they may need a copy of 941, W2, W3, and also the P&L or maybe tax return for last year as well. And hopefully within 2 weeks, they'll give you an answer. Now, once you get money, as Adil explained to you, you have 8 weeks to use the money. And as long as 75% you use it for payroll, 25% you use it for utility, it's supposed to be forgiven. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the amount of loan will go down if from February 15 through June 30th, you lay off any employee, you let go an employee or reduce the hours substantially. Just keep that in mind. There's a formula for those as well. So you have to make sure that employees, you don't fire them or then you don't let it go. But if you have done it, you're applying for the loan, one solution could be you can hire them back. So you can use this money, within 8 weeks. And once you use the money, it's not like forgiven. What needs to be done, you have to go back to the lender, show it to them how you did this, how this the whole money you have used it, and they have around 60 days to make a decision if the loan is forgiven. So this is how PPP for employer, when you have a W-2, how it works. Same way it works for self-employed 1099 individual as well. The only difference is, remember, we talked about W-2, you use the net business profit for the calculation purpose. So this is, in a nutshell, how it works, that you go through a local bank, but we're having some issues that some banks are capped out. And there's some news came in that a lot of money already had been given out. So the money are limited. So Adil can explain to you what are some of the options there if the bank is not taking application.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation by Syed about the details of the program. And what we are seeing is that there's a lot of confusion that people have about these. So we wanted to take this opportunity to clarify exactly how these things need to be addressed, especially the payroll calculation. Now, what we're also seeing is that a lot of people are coming up to us and saying that, I'm going to my business banker, but they're saying that they will not be able to take my application. And in that case, what we would suggest is that come and speak with us. We are speaking with lenders on a daily basis, and we can help direct you in the right direction. But again, like we said, if you're an independent contractor, if you're self-employed, if you have a practice, this is for you. And it is being given out on a first come, first served basis. So if you haven't applied for it, get your application in as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. That was very nice. I'm sure we have lots of questions coming from our audience. Dr. Paracha, Dr. Chitani, do you see some questions that we could perhaps field here?
Yeah, I think we have a few of them here. And one of the questions is, I have an existing SBA loan. Am I still eligible for a PPP loan? I think that's one of them. There was another question which says, can your employee collect unemployment insurance and you get PPP? So that's another one. Third one is an independent contractor being paid with 1099. I think we already talked a little bit about that. So I think those are three main, and of course, a number of them are saying that, how about if we have a mix of 1099 and W-2? So, and the fifth one was that, if you have multiple businesses, and you own 100% of all the businesses, can you apply on each of them separately?
Let me try to answer a few questions related to the PPP, which I can, because SBA, I think Adil will explain, and I will try to explain how you can use both the loans together. But one question you asked that if you have already a PPP loan and you let an employee collecting unemployment, what happens? Remember, in order to be fully effective for the PPP, you have to hire the employee back. So unemployment stops though. Right, it is fine, but you have to hire the employee back, the unemployment stops for the employee. So just to clarify it. Number two, that you mentioned there, what about the mix that I have W-2, but I am 1099? What am I supposed to do about this? Like the owner, there's a situation where the owner is all 1099, Schedule C, and the employee is W-2. What do you do at this time? So what you do in this situation, remember the deadline we spoke about. So this is a situation where there's a mix. April 3rd, when the date started, if you go any bank, you use for your calculation purpose, the Schedule C net income for the calculation. So you have to let the banker know that I am Schedule C, I am not W-2. So up to 100,000, same way you take it, divide by 12, that's the amount you will use it for the PPP loan. And
I think the other question was that if I have an existing SBA loan, am I still eligible for a PPP loan? Yes, you are still eligible. You can still apply. If you're an independent contractor being paid with 1099, but I do not bill directly to the patient services, I'm with a group. So if you're an independent contractor, you are considered to be self-employed. So you will submit your own application. The employer is not going to submit the application for you. And I have a W-2 income over 200,000. That's another question we are seeing. And as Syed explained, it's going to get capped at 100,000. So only 100,000 is going to get counted.
Then there was one other question there was, I understand you have to rehire the baseline number of employees for 8 weeks. If some of your employees don't return after furlough, can you substitute them with new hires? And if you can maintain the same number of employees, would that be okay?
yes, that as long as it doesn't have to be the same. As far as the law is, just remember, this law keep changing, but the law as we are reading right now, as long as you maintain the same level, because you cannot control who will leave, and the law is you have to hire it back. So, but that employee doesn't want to come back, you hire back another employee, you should be fine. As long as you maintain.
Also, one thing to bear in mind is that, these programs are pretty fluid and the guidance keeps coming, new guidance keeps coming. So one part is to apply for the loan, which if you're eligible, you should do as soon as possible. The second process is the forgiveness of the loan. So you will have to work closely with your banker in order to figure out those details, exactly how it's going to be forgiven. And I'm sure we're going to receive more guidance on that as time goes on, but that's a great question.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure there's any other pressing question on PPP right now?
I think there's one other one which is interesting, and it says that I have cut down on office hours and employee working less hours. Do I have to pay them full 40 hours a week? Because I think we do see a number of practices who may not be paying 40 hours a week to all their employees because of some decreased hours.
Yes. Yes, so there is a rule that if you substantially cut down the hours, the PPP loan does go down. And we can send you there's a formula set up for that. How much? I think it's about more than 25%. You or 30%. You cut it, the PPP loan substantially goes down. It's not like it will reject it, but the amount will vary.
I think, Nishat, I'm not sure if you answered this yet or not, but the question I just saw pop up again was if somebody has multiple offices, that's number one, or multiple businesses, how do they deal with this particular?
Yeah, so they are applying separately, separate TINs. They are, so now the issue, the interesting thing will be, would you get separate loans or you will be aggregated, one loan? We're still yet to see it, but clients have applied separate businesses separately.
But if it's two offices in the same practice,
It's supposed to be count as one.
okay, very good. So clearly lots of interest in PPP, and we've got more material to cover. So if we have time at the end, we'll certainly jump back. We are taking questions again through the chat here on Zoom and also on Facebook Live. So please do keep your questions coming. Let's move on to another very topic of great interest, which is the economic injury disaster loan. Again, lots of confusion out there. Some people think this is just a $10,000 loan. Other people seem to think this is a $2 million loan. And then there's lots of talk going around that if somebody gets the $10,000, they don't actually have to pay it back, or it gets applied to the PPP. So Adil, if you could please elaborate.
Absolutely. So if you're a small business, this loan is for you, less than 500 employees. This is also a good option available to access funding. And again, this would be applicable to self-employed as well as physician practices. This is basically, the EIDL loan is called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And it is for those businesses that have suffered economic loss due to COVID-19 crisis. Now, the interesting thing about this loan, Tayyib, is that if you compare the terms of this loan to a bank loan, it is actually extremely attractive. So the interest rate is only 3.75% a year. The payback period can be as long as 30 years, and the loan amount can be as high as $2 million. Now, obviously, the determination of the loan amount is going to be done by the SBA when you submit the application, but that's the maximum amount. And the idea of this loan is that you can use it for working capital, for operations. As an example, things like account payable, this is what you can use for. Now, with the PPP loan, with the application, you actually have to go to the bank and submit the application. With this loan, the process is actually simpler. You can apply for this loan by going on the SBA website and submitting your application. Now, as you're going through that application, there is a question that you get asked that, do you want a grant? And as part of this loan, you can get a $10,000 grant, which you do not have to pay back. That's the maximum amount that you get. But the rest of the money, you do have to pay back based on the terms that are outlined. So this is also a very good option available if you need to access capital. This EIDL loan is also a very good option for self-employed physician and physician practices.
Nishat, is there, coming to you, is there one loan that's better than the other between the PPP and the EIDL, or can one apply for both?
Yeah, so to answer the question, whether EIDL is better or PPP better, what am I supposed to do? What's the, so the first question first, how big is your payroll? That's the number one question to ask. If you're looking for forgiveness of the amount, and if your payroll is way too small, and the maximum forgiveness is coming out to be, let's say, $8,000, I'm giving an example. All right, for SBA, just keep in mind, $10,000 is free. So might as well just apply for one. That could be one option. Less headache, and PPP more. And the other option could be that, hey, I don't want any loan burden. I just want forgiveness. PPP is fine. But I have seen instances where people applied for both. You can apply for both. As of right now, the information we have it, as long as it is not for the same reason. So for example, using PPP for payroll, you cannot use SBA for payroll as well. It has to be for something else. Like Adil explained, working capital or accounts payable, that's completely fine. Keep in mind, SBA, the loan amount is 3.75 for 30 years. It's a very attractive loan, but don't fall for it. But as Adil explained, you're not going to get it, whatever you want. The SBA will take a look at the revenue and let you know how much you're getting. But the question becomes that, should we apply for both? It is very hard to, and giving a generic answer. The best situation would be to know you have both options, talk to your financial advisor or CPA, see your situation. If you need working capital on top of PPP, maybe it's a good option, but I would recommend you speak to a financial advisor about this.
Thank you. Habib or Saad, any questions related to these loans before we move on to Medicare?
No, I think we still have some questions about PPE, so maybe at the end we can go back to that so you can cover
Okay.
all your questions.
Great, we'll circle back to that. Let's move on to another very important subject, and that's Medicare. Lots of our healthcare providers do take care of Medicare patients, have to deal with CMS, and obviously there's a great program that the CMS and the government came up with to try to help those providers that are Medicare participants. Nishat, could you please tell us about the advanced Medicare payment?
Yeah, so advanced Medicare payment, approved by CMS. Nowadays, hospitals and practitioners who participate in Medicare, they're requesting, because of the business are suffering, for advanced Medicare payments. So the way it works that 2019, from October till December, last 3 months of the year, whatever collection you have you can apply for an advance payment. Now, the good thing about this payment, you do not have to pay it back for 4 months, almost for 120 days. And after that, the repayment starts. And the repayments will start from the new claim you submit. But just keep in mind a few things that once you get the advance payment, you have to pay it back in 7 months. All right. If you don't pay it back 7 months, you have some options. You can apply for some leniency from Medicare. It depends on what your situation is, but there could be a significant interest loan into it rate, which is almost about 10%. So some clients are asking the question, hey, I took the advanced Medicare Medicare payment. I expected the revenue to go up, but then coronavirus comes back in fall. What am I supposed to do at that time? And again, the revenue goes down, I have to pay interest. One option could be that, hey, you don't have to apply 100% of the whole amount. You can apply 50% of the amount last 3 months of 2019, see how it goes, see if you feel comfortable, and you can apply 50% more, because it could be you can take the money in installment. There's no restriction about that. So these options are available. If you have a busy practice, it's a good idea to apply for this as well, depending on your circumstances.
Thank you. And then we have, I wanted to just also just say that there's another program which is called the HHS Provider Relief Program, and some people are confusing this with the Medicare Advanced Payment Program. So, it would be great, Adil, if you could maybe clarify that for a lot of us. What is this HHS Provider Relief Program, and how is it, again, different from the Medicare Advanced Payment Program?
Yes, that's a very valid concern that people have, is how are these two different. So just to clarify, the Medicare advance payment is basically an advance that you get, which you eventually have to pay back. This is different. This is under the CARES Act. There's been a relief fund that has been made available for healthcare providers of $100 billion. Out of that $100 billion, $30 billion is being dispersed immediately to physicians to practices and physicians who do Medicare fee-for-service investments. So if you are a medical practice, if you're a self-employed physician, in 2019, if you got Medicare fee-for-service reimbursements, this is for you. You should expect a payment. Now, the method in which they are transmitting this money to you is that if you typically get your Medicare fee-for-service reimbursements in your bank account, via ACH, you're going to get this payment. How much are you going to get? They are going to basically determine it based on a formula. That formula will take into consideration what your 2019 collections were, and proportionately, you would receive that money. Now, as far as some people have already received this money. Some people are asking, when are we going to get it? The idea is they want to give it out to you. They want to put it in your hands as soon as possible. Some people started receiving it as early as Friday through ACH. Others are going to be receiving it as time goes on. If typically you get your Medicare reimbursements through a check, then you will be receiving a check. But within a few weeks, you should be getting these funds. Now, this is, there's an important distinction compared to the Medicare advance payments. The distinction is that this money you do not have to pay back. Once you get it, it's yours to keep, as long as within 30 days of receiving the payment, you must go on the HHS website and you must make an attestation. And that attestation is basically saying that I have received the money and I agree to terms and conditions behind receiving it. Now, a lot of people are asking, what are those terms and conditions? So generally, the idea is, we would highly recommend that you go on the HHS website. They have those terms and conditions laid out there, so you review them in detail. But generally, the idea is that this should be for healthcare-related expenses or lost revenues that are attributable to coronavirus. And there are some additional details there, such as, for example, you cannot use it for things like abortion. Now, after reviewing the terms and conditions, if you feel as if you're not comfortable keeping this money, then what you have to do is you have to call HHS within 30 days of receiving this money, and they will give you the instructions of how you can send it back as soon as possible. So this is also a good program available for Medicare fee-for-service providers.
Thank you. Any questions coming from our Facebook feed or Zoom regarding Medicare or HHS provider relief?
There is a question. Someone's asking, if I have a hospice business, will I get HHS provider relief?
Well, the way the guidance that they have provided is that in 2019, if you received Medicare fee-for-service, so irrespective, if you receive Medicare fee-for-service, you will get this money.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's my understanding as well. Regardless of the type of provision, if you are a contracted Medicare fee-for-service provider, that you should be getting this. Any other questions regarding these programs?
There's one more question
yeah,
on Facebook. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to intervene on this one. I think with hospice, I think it depends, right? Because hospice is not a fee-for-service setup with Medicare. Medicare directly gives a lump sum to patients who are under hospice. So it will be technically different for businesses who are doing hospice. I think as Tayyab and everyone else has said, that it is going to be the fee-for-service programs who you're involved with in Medicare, and that's how they're going to determine the payments. Sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
One question on Facebook, is HHS money taxable as an income? How about PPP loan if it's forgiven? Do you owe taxes on that?
Great question.
Yeah, so the PPP is a forgivable loan. So as of right now, the information we have that there's no tax on it. It's a forgivable loan. The loan, you just use the money. So as of right now, the information we haven't heard anything about taxes that you have to pay on that. As long as you use it for payroll, you should be good to go.
I would reiterate that for the HHS as well. Whatever guidance that we have seen as of right now, we haven't seen anything about taxes. But with all these things, I would make the caveat that these are very new programs. Things are fluid. Things keep changing. They issue guidance on a regular basis. So what we try to do is that all these programs that are relevant to physicians, as soon as the guidance comes out, as soon as we get clarity on things, we send them out to our clients. And so if you're interested in getting that information, at the end of this talk, we will explain to you how you can keep in touch and get that relevant information from us.
Yeah, I'll throw a little personal information in here of my own experience with HHS. I did not receive my HHS relief on Friday. I then expected to receive it this morning. I didn't receive it again today. And we did call the hotline for the provider relief at HHS and surprisingly got through. And what we were told was that there were a number of sort of pre-screened accounts on Friday that immediately got their disbursement. and they're now going to start processing the rest of the Medicare fee-for-service providers, and we will get our payments. In fact, they were able to tell me the amount of the payment I would receive. The second thing, just wanted to throw one comment, and again, I would advise everybody to please reach out to a financial advisor like Adil and Nishat, because keep in mind that these funds, a lot of them are coming directly into your business accounts. So you have to then understand how you're going to deal with withdrawing, or using this money, or withdrawing the money. And then Dr. Chitani, you made a good point previously to me in my own discussion with you about using Previa and how you're getting these funds, which I think is important for people to understand who work with a large group.
Yes, Tayyip. So I think a few things which we need to remember is that if you're part of a major medical practice or a group, like I am with Previa Medical Group, the funds flow because we use the Medicare TIN for Medicare. For Previa, it's one TIN for everybody. The fund will flow through them, and then it will come over to us eventually. And so you need to talk to your group about it. I think the second part of it is also those who have electronic medical records, who have a billing attached to the EMR, like Athena Health, for example, that does your billing as well. Usually the fund goes to a bank. In Athena, for example, I know that it goes to US Bank. It won't come to you directly. So usually any Medicare payment will go to US Bank, and then the Athena takes up the billing fee, and then they will send it to you in your account. So there may be a delay because of that. You need to reach out to your EMR or your billing company if that is something you have set up to make sure that the funds are flowing to you.
Great, thank you, Habib. Okay, we'll move on to the next subject. And again, if we have questions about the Medicare HHS, we'll circle back in just a few minutes. Adil, I'm sorry, I want to just touch upon one other subject, and that is that are there other stimulus in the CARES Act, and particularly in relation to people who have been laid off?
Absolutely, Tayyab, and that's, I think that people who've been laid off, a lot of people are being furloughed as well, and not only doctors, but a lot of people in the workforce are being laid off, they're being furloughed. And I think the point that Nishat made before this is a very important point, that if your employer who laid you off or who furloughed you, if they are applying for the PPP loan, in order for their loan to get fully forgiven, they have to maintain their payroll. So what they might have to do is that in order to get their loan forgiven, they may have to give you your hours back, or they may have to hire you back. So there is a possibility of that you should be aware of. But in the meantime, there's a lot of good stimulus programs that are available, which it is important for you to understand. So for example, a married couple filing jointly, if you're making less than $150,000, you will get from IRS a stimulus of $2,400. If you have children who are dependent on you, you will get an additional $500 per child. They are also pumping money into unemployment. So on top of what you normally get for your unemployment benefit, you would also get an additional $600 a week. And a lot of physicians that we know, they actually have student loans. So another important provision in the CARE Act is that you can actually defer your student loan payments. You can stop making your student loan payments. So that will also help those folks that with cash flow needs. Now, in the United States, the method in which we go and get a mortgage is we typically go to banks. Now, it's important to understand that out of the mortgages that are available in the US, about 60% of those mortgages are federally backed mortgage. So another provision in the CARE Act is that if you have a federally backed mortgage, you can approach your lender and request that you not make mortgage payments for as long as up to 1 year. So this could help a lot of people with their cash flow, because typically mortgage tends to be one of your biggest expenditures. Now, every physician that we know has some type of a retirement account. You either have a 401k or a 403b, a 457, or an IRA account. Now, if you're below 59 and a half years of age, if you withdraw money from your retirement account, you have to, number one, pay a 10% penalty, and number two, you have to pay income taxes immediately. So if you're in the 40% tax bracket, 40 plus 10, 50%, half the money will be gone if you withdraw monies from your retirement account. Now, under the CARE Act, they've made a provision that you could take up to $100,000 out from your retirement account. If you're below 59 and a half years of age, you do not have to pay the 10% penalty. And as long as you put the money back into the retirement account over a 3-year period, you also do not have to pay taxes on it. Now, if for some reason you don't want to put the money back into the retirement account, then what happens is that you don't have to pay the taxes immediately. You have to pay the taxes over a 3-year period. So, and then related to the 401k, for people that have a 401k, you can also, one option available to you is that you can also take a loan now under the CARE Act. And that loan could be as high as $100,000, and you have up to 6 years to pay it back. So again, some of these provisions may not be for everyone, and certainly as we are reiterating throughout this call, speak to your CPA, speak to your financial advisor. Every individual situation is unique, but this is good information to have to know what type of stimulus is actually available to you.
Thank you. Before I get to my final question, let's go back to our audience. Anything from our Facebook or Zoom feed?
So I think somebody asked, how does hospital employed physician benefit from the CARE Act? Because they are W-2, they don't have a business, how they can benefit from this?
So I guess one thing, as Adil mentioned, that if you furlough, that definitely will, there are a bunch of, strategies you spoke about, you can use it. But also depending on your income, the CARE Act, if your income is below $150,000, you're supposed to get a stimulus check about $2,400 one time. It's not a lot of money, but still the stimulus money is coming in. And also, just keep in mind, in order for the PPP, as I explained, for it to work, the hospital has to, from February until June, have to hire the employee back if they furlough it. So it will indirectly help them. And also, just as Adil mentioned about the HHS relief program, just keep in mind around close to 40 billion have been used, 30 to 40 billion, but still 70 billion is still there, out there. It will be eventually been given to people who take Medicaid, for example, or who has higher salary with the hospital, with seeing patient per revenue basis, per visit basis. What about them? So the AMA is working with them. We are keeping our eyes open with HHS, how they're going to distribute the 70 billion. So keep in mind, it is still the money needs to be distributed. So we'll be keeping you updated as soon as any news comes in about the W-2 employee and also about the hospitalists who take Medicaid.
Great.
Okay. We have one more question here. Does the spending of HHS money need to be reported to CMS? If so, how would the reporting need to be done?
Yeah, so keep in mind for the HHS and also PPP, I just want to give you, so you're getting all the grants, right? Now, there has to be a mechanism what if you get an audit now to show what did you do? So this is something as of right now, as Adil mentioned, you have to use for healthcare costs. That's important, but you should put it into a separate account ideally. Same way, one rule of thumb for PPP account, the money you're receiving as a loan, don't try to commingle it with the working capital you have it, because you have to show it to the bank that, hey, we have used the money for payroll purpose, so it needs to be forgiven. But if you commingle it with the existing payroll, it becomes complicated. So, but again, this is an idea we have it. One option could be you can run special payroll for the employee to run the PPP. The same way you can have receipt for the HHS relief money you're receiving, that where you're spending the money. So because for HHS, all you have to do is attest it, but just in case if you get an audit, you have to prove how you have used the money. So as we're getting clear guidance, but that's why it's important to be on top with the CPA and financial advisor. Don't just assume it's free, nothing will happen. Just have a good record of how you're spending the money. That's extremely important.
And Nishat, getting back to the attestation one more time, I saw a question had popped up earlier. One that's commonly asked is that, as part of the attestation process, do you have to attest that you're going to use all this money to treat COVID-19 patients? And I know that's a very controversial question, and there's been a lot of talk about that being taken out of there because there was some talk that something like that was in the HHS wording. Anything you can address to that regards?
The only thing Adil, you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. Basically, again, so that's why I would recommend that you have to review those terms and conditions very thoroughly to understand what exactly you can use the money for and what exactly you cannot use the money for. But the general gist of it is that it is for healthcare related expenses or lost revenues that are attributable to coronavirus. So, that could cover a range of things. But we would highly recommend that you review it and ascertain for yourself as to whether you're comfortable with abiding with and attesting to those terms. Great.
Let's move on to the last question, and then we'll circle back with any other questions from the audience. Nishat, can you talk about some of the IRS tax breaks for small businesses, please?
Yeah, a few of the tax break, I'm talking about those who are self-employed. It will really help a lot. For example, that if you have employee, as an employer, you pay 6% Social Security tax. So you have an option to delay, to defer that. You don't have to pay the taxes until December if you want to. That if you, depending on your economic situation, this is one option you have. You have to actually apply for it through the CPA. You can defer the Social Security taxes. Number two, the tax filing deadline has increased to July now. So this is one, you have to worry about right now. At this point, a lot of self-employed individuals have defined benefit plan. You don't have to contribute right now. You can contribute until December if the deadline has been extended. And lastly, a lot of physicians who have their own practice and they're renting themselves. So real estate, just have your close eye on the real estate regulation. The depreciation, there's a huge change. Typical depreciation in a newly developed properties is around close to 39 years. We're looking into the depreciation schedule. They lower it to almost as low as 15% depreciation. Usually you have to do a cost segregation to come up with it, but automatically it is newly developed property. So that will help you a lot if you have rental income coming in as a passive income to offset some of the incomes you're having. So make sure you speak to the CPA about the depreciation, about the payroll taxes, and also the defined benefit. You have some time to make the contributions.
Great, thank you so much, Nishat. We have about 10 minutes left. We can now open this up for questions from our audience. Guys, we can go in any sort of random subject. I think there are a lot of questions that have come in, so I'll defer that to you to choose those questions and let Nishat and Adil answer them.
So let me start with the first question, and then me and Samia are gonna alternate. So one question was, Wells Fargo locked me out. What are we going to do in that scenario if that is the only business account you have?
Yeah, so we've been hearing that a lot, and I think that the background of that was that they had some federal limits, so because of which they could not extend the loan. But again, I would say that if you have a relationship with a business banker, and for some reason they are not able to process your loan application, you should not delay and just keep waiting. You should contact us. We could discuss with you a couple of other options so you could get your loan submitted as soon as possible, because it is a first come, first served basis.
Okay. Any other, Nishat, you'd like to add to that, or?
No, I just want to, I saw in the screen one question someone asked that I'm already a W-2 employee with the hospital. I make more than 250,000 now, but I also do locum as well. I see it. So for those individuals do qualify though, if your income has gone down, if you cannot practice, if you cannot do it. So those deadline or dates started on April 10th. So remember the same process we talked about for PPP, just use your net business income to apply for it. So hospital income 250,000 or whatever you make, that separate. This is, I'm talking about your own individual income.
Yeah, great point. Great question. Okay, we'll move on to the next question, please.
There's one from Facebook. Is it too late to apply for any of the two PPP and EIDL options?
No, sorry.
It is not too late. You can still apply, and that's part of the reason why we are here, is because as we started speaking to more and more physicians, we realized that physicians are so busy being on the front lines and seeing patients that they're not aware of some of these programs. So it is definitely not too late to apply for the PPP or the EIDL, and if it matches your needs, you should apply for it.
Our next question, once the PPP loan is processed, who approves or denies the loan?
Yeah, so goes back to the lender, as I explained to you. So you get the approval done by the bank. So the reason why we saw this delay or all the confusions, because the money is coming from the government, obviously, the treasury, but someone needs to be the middle person to verify all your data. So that's why we see all this delay coming in. The online wasn't working is because they have to come up with the process, and they make money too, the lenders. Some money they're making, charging the government. They don't pay, you don't have to pay any of those, but they do all the verification. So they are the one who's making a determination that whether the loan is approved or not. And they're the one who will make a determination once you use the money, if the money you have used it the right manner or not, and if it's forgivable.
A follow-up question on the same thing is that, somebody asked that I have submitted the application, it's been 1 week. I haven't heard anything. What should I do next?
So if you have submitted the application with your bank, it's, one of the things that you can do is call your business banker, the relationship that you have, leverage that, call them, follow up with them. And if you feel that you're not getting a response, then you could look at an alternative place to submit the application. Now, you cannot get two PPP loans. So eventually, if you get approved by one, you'll have to cancel the other. But definitely try to be proactive in getting your application processed and approved.
Okay, other questions, please?
There's one about if, as an employer, you contribute to a 401k profit sharing plan, how much and how is that calculated into the monthly payroll amount?
So as an employer, you calculate it into the profit sharing plan. So let's say most banks are asking this question, do you have a monthly contribution into a profit sharing plan? Most banks are asking this question. If they don't ask, what you do, you let them know that you are in fact contributing into the profit sharing plan. Once you make this determination that how much is the monthly amount is, that you can add it. This is one way of doing it, monthly. Or if you have the yearly amount, let's say, usually most profit sharing calculation people contribute sometimes for 2019, they're gonna do it with the extension September. So what you do that you divide let's say 60,000 divided by 12, 5,000, that will be the amount for profit sharing. You add it for the calculation purpose for PPP. Remember, only the employer portion that goes for the calculation purpose.
And if you filed for your 2019 returns, business returns, that number will be there, so it'll be easy verification. Some lenders are also telling us that if you haven't filed for 2019 business tax returns, they will look at the employer contribution numbers from 2018. But again, this is where a case by case with the lender comes in. But definitely, one of the most overlooked portion of the PPP application is the employer contribution. So make sure that if you are doing the profit sharing, it is supposed to get added.
Next question. It seems like COVID-19 will be flattening and under control in coming weeks. Can physician look forward to serving the patients back to normal within a few weeks, and will stock market follow as such? So I think it's more like a market, forecast. Somebody's asking.
So Nishat and Adil, what does your crystal ball tell you where the stock market is going by July 15th?
So, we can actually have, because that is a topic in itself, and we could actually dedicate a whole webinar to that. But, what we are telling people is that, it's very difficult to predict exactly where it's going to bottom and when exactly it's going to go back up. But what we can predict is that if you look at long periods of time, if you look at it 10 years from now, the stock market is going to be higher than where it is right now. So, and the market is typically forward looking. So it's factoring in the worst case scenarios that is going to happen in the future. So at times like this, it's very important that you're diversified properly based on your investment objectives. At times like this, it's very important that you don't make rash decisions, like selling right at the bottom. And like I said, we can actually dedicate a whole separate webinar for that.
But one thing we will add, as Adil mentioned, that one thing you don't want to do is time the market. That's very extremely important. Just some people, what they try to do, sell everything, wait for opportunity to come back and buy everything back. This is one thing you must want to avoid it. Hey, things start to look good, now go in, things start to look bad, let's sell everything. So that's why a financial advisor can go work with you, with your emotion, with your financial plan, because we have seen something, not exactly, but we have seen SARS, we have seen Ebola, we know how it works. But it's important that you stick with the plan, stick with the game plan strategy, try not to time the market. That is one of the most, the biggest mistake people make, is timing the market.
Of course, absolutely.
The average return of the stock market over a 20-year period is about 8.5% a year. And during those 20 years, if you had missed 10 of the best days, your return instead of 8.5% would be only 2.6%. And those 10 of the best days typically happen at times like this. So like Syed said, timing is always, it sounds very good, but in practicality, it doesn't work.
I see some good questions coming in. I hate, we've got a very active audience here. So let's just keep going if it's okay with Nishat and Adil for a few more minutes. Any other question that you're seeing right now that you'd like to tell us about, Samia or Habib?
Yeah, I think there is a question. What basically is talking about that I'm working on PRN basis at 2 places, although getting W-2 from both places. Can I apply for these programs? So it all depends on your, I guess, the setup, which, if you have an LLC or a corporation.
Yeah, if you're just an employee, then you cannot apply for PPP or the EIDL if you're an employee. But if you're an owner, because a lot of owners get salaries as well, they give themselves W-2. If you're an owner, then yes, you can apply. So this is, again, remember, this is for small business owners. That's what this program has been designed for.
So I think the follow-up question on this one is also that there's a physician who works on PRN basis and now not getting any calls, right? So a lot of the docs are working as locum. Some of the specialists, especially, they stop getting any locum positions at this time because every practice closed. So can they apply for this program? Because they're usually getting 1099 from those.
Yes, so if you're getting 1099, again, from those, so you could have LLC or don't have LLC, doesn't matter, because if you're getting 1099, eventually you are sole proprietorship. So if you're sole proprietorship, Schedule C or W-2, you can apply for it. Just remember the dates, as I spoke about, April 3rd, W-2, 1099, just started April 10th.
Okay. Any other questions?
There's one more on here. Is it a good idea to get the PPP loan application initiated with a big bank and small credit union to get the funds ASAP?
Yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, as far as, submitting your application is concerned, it's different with every bank. Some banks are able to process it quicker. Other banks are taking longer. Sometimes with the big banks, they're getting a lot of application load. So because of that, they may take a little longer. But again, it depends on a case-by-case basis. Every bank has their own procedure. But if the question is that if I've applied in one place and can I submit another application, you can, but you'll have to cancel one once another one gets approved.
Okay, great.
One other question, Tayyib, I think, somebody asked, especially those subspecialties who are very procedure oriented, like for example, your specialty, Tayyib, ophthalmology, where mainly your business is kind of shut down.
Right.
Doing anything. So if there are nobody, like there are no patients coming in, you cannot do anything, and your employees are actually cannot be kept on payroll, and there's nothing going on for them. They are kind of stuck in this bad situation. They can't keep their employees on full-time pay, so they can't really apply much for the PPP necessarily. So there was one doctor who asked that specific question: what can they do for their own living, and how can they manage their finances in this tough situation?
yeah, so absolutely. So just remember the whole coronavirus thing, that the government is betting on the fact that they need to reopen the economy quicker. It's going to be a short-term thing. We're not predicting it's going to be a very long-term thing in terms of reopening the economy. So healthcare are the frontline employees, and as of right now, about $100 billion were dedicated for the healthcare professional. About that 30 billion have been used. 70 billion still they're looking how to spend it. They haven't exactly figured this out yet. But if I'm pretty positive, or we are looking into it, that if they find out that these things are going on too long, they will come up with maybe another stimulus. But Adil mentioned about few strategies while you have high expenses to need to sustain, like for example, mortgages. Others spoke about also the 401k loan provision, and also about the student loans if you have it. He spoke about that. So use those strategies and wait it out. And hopefully with time, when this crisis goes away and the hospital hires you back full time, hopefully your situation will get better.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll ask one last time. Any last question to ask before we conclude? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Adil, Nishat, Wall Street Alliance Group. Fantastic presentation. You took a very complicated subject matter and broke it down and explained it very nicely, and patiently took our questions as well from our communities. On behalf of UPNA DMV and American Muslim Health Professionals, I am grateful to you and my colleagues, Dr. Samia Paracha, Dr. Habib Chitani. We're grateful, and the leadership at American Muslim Health Professionals, that you took the time this evening to address our communities. Also, I'd like to say to the communities that these organizations represent and beyond, these are difficult times that we're living in. Everybody knows that. That's become a cliche statement, but honestly it is. Especially in the healthcare professions, it's not easy to talk about the economic hardships that one's going through. It can be a difficult thing to talk about even with your own family, your friends. But please understand that these are the times where leadership needs to step up. Organizations such as UPNA DMV, American Muslim Health Professionals, need to step up. We're here for you. The leadership is here for you. Please reach out to us, and we can direct you to great organizations like Wall Street Alliance Group. And these guys did all of this out of the goodness of their heart as a service to the community. Please, I encourage you, if you don't have a good financial advisor, reach out to them at Wall Street Alliance Group, reach out to the leadership here in these organizations. Let us know how we can help. This is the time for helping each other, and that's how we're going to get through this. But together we'll get through it. That's for sure. Inshallah, I have no doubt about it. We are deeply indebted to the audience for coming tonight and making this a great conversation. And with that, I bid all of you good night. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah bless us all and get us through this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.